am thrilled to be in this beautiful, incredible location with this group and to be able to talk about the power of partnerships and collaboration. As leaders, all of us are responsible for driving growth, and we're in a time in the world where you can't do that alone. It requires partnerships and working with the external world, and that is an amplifier and powerful, but it's not always easy, and so excited to hear your lessons. I'd love to start with just maybe a little more detail from each of you. We'll start with you, Debbie, on introductions and how you think about partnerships in your world of business.
Wow. Well, I'm Debra Lee. That's actually the name of my book. If any of you are curious, it's I Am Debra Lee. It's also my Twitter handle, well, not Twitter anymore, Instagram handle, Threads, I don't know what there is, but I am Debra Lee. And I spent 32 years at BET Networks. I started as general counsel and eventually became COO and then CEO. I was CEO for 13 years, which I didn't realize was a long time until I left. And then I was told most CEOs don't make it more than 4 or 5 years. I was like, why didn't someone tell me? I just had my head down working and things, and I loved it. And things kept happening and happening in a good way. Now I am spend a lot of my time on board service. I'm on the board of Procter & Gamble, Marriott International, and Warner Brothers Discovery. So that takes up a lot of time. I wrote a book, as I just mentioned, 2 years ago, so I was doing a lot of book touring. And I have a foundation called Leading Women Define Foundation, which I started 16 years ago. And it's really, I was telling Kheri, it's really turned into something very magical, and every year we have a summit and bring prominent women of color together to talk about issues they may have and their goals and businesses they want to start. And so women come from all different sectors, all different industries, and we're together for 4 days, just having a little fun. We have dance parties till like 2 o'clock in the morning. Also master classes. I learned how to drum from Sheila E., but also very serious topics like mental health, helping our young Black boys, elder care, AI, whatever is going on in the world. When we have the summit, we've also done events around the country. We went to Detroit and had a half-a-day summit with Black business female leaders. We did something on Black women in tech in San Francisco. And we have a new program that's 3 years old called Rising Leaders, which is for women 25 to 35. And to the point we were discussing earlier, if you're not in a sorority, there are not a lot of groups where you can go and talk about business, or if you're a founder or entrepreneur, how you do that, or if you're executives, how you do that. So we've done this Rising Leaders part of Leading Women Defined for 3 years. It quickly became something magical. There's something about if you get Black women and women of color together, it's gonna be magical. Let me just tell you, whether you're dancing or coming up with new ideas. So we do the Rising Leaders in November. We're in the middle of applications now. It's really quickly become an important part of what we do. And women at that age don't have a place to turn. And even a sorority is not necessarily going to give you business advice and business and entrepreneurial insights and AI and things that we try to instill in the women, how to get on boards, things like that. So I think that's all I'm doing. Well, I started a company called, I started a handbag company. Gabrielle has one. That was in the last couple of months. I soft launched it at Leading Women Define. I've always wanted to be in fashion, and 50 years ago, my dad wouldn't let me go to art school. He made me go to law school. So now, 50 years later, I'm finally pursuing my dream of designing handbags. So I also started a company called Monarchs Collective to help get more people of color on boards. So I'm doing a lot. To your question about partnerships.
Yeah.
All of it involves partnerships.
Yeah.
The thing I learned very quickly, as I said, I think I said my background's in law, and you know, in the legal field, you can work isolated. You know, as long as you have an assistant who can type up what you do or whatever, a lot of isolated research. When I first became COO of BET Networks, I realized immediately how important partnerships were, how important collaboration would be. And unfortunately, I inherited a team that was not my team. The founder passed them on to me. And it took me a long time to put my team in place and people that were invested in my success and the company's success. So those were very tough years for me. But I learned, I'm not a micromanager. I let people do their jobs. I try to hire people who are expert in their field and let them go as far as they can and know they can come back to me for guidance, for resources, whatever they need for, you know, if they're having disputes with, you know, one of their peers or whatever. That's not the way my predecessor managed. He was a micromanager. He would tell people what to do. So again, it took me a long time to move the company in the direction I wanted to move. Now with Leading Women Define, the same thing is true. We're supported by sponsors. They can be companies or other not-for-profits. And Gabrielle Glore, who's executive director of Leading Women Define, does an amazing job on working with our partners and making sure that you know, they don't just give us money, they collaborate. And whatever they want the women of Leading Women Define to know, we try to do that and provide a platform for them to get their message across. It's kind of like what's happening here. This is my first time here, and I'm just awestruck by the number of brands that are here, the number of events. You know, it's very well orchestrated, and I guess that could only come from brand and advertiser type people. And that's why it works so well here. And I'm happy to talk about my view of brands and marketing and advertising and its importance in the media business, but I won't do that now. I'll stop and let others talk.
Kheri?
Yes, very good. I am Kheri Tillman. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Primo Brands. You may not know the company name because we merged and became public in November, but you'll know the brands with Saratoga and Mountain Valley, and if you're from California, it's Arrowhead, Florida, it's Zephyr Hills, New York, it's Poland Spring. We have 5 brands that are over 100 years old, and we have 2 brands that are $2 billion brands, right? So the business is an amazing business to be in, but over 25 years or so in marketing and in the industry of understanding what brands can be and how to grow them, partnerships are critical, right? So clearly from a business perspective and having a partnership internally with your CEO or CFO, but externally we have found that partnerships can really help brands punch above their weight, right? So understanding what you need a partnership to do, what you need the brand to do, how you want to grow the brand. Is it about awareness? Is it about changing perception? What are you trying to do? And finding a partner that can actually allow you to be bigger than what you are is critically important. And so that's how we've used partnerships a lot, whether it was with the NBA years ago with JBL, or today with MLB and our water brands. If you think about it, right, the water brands, you have America's favorite pastime with America's favorite waters. Which is true by share. So, finding those partners that are trying to do the same thing that you're doing can really allow your business to grow.
Yeah, amazing.
Okay, we need to talk after this.
Yes.
You're calling out baseball and all this.
The deal could be done. It seems like.
NFL's next.
Okay.
NFL's next.
All right. This was all about collaboration.
Dexter.
My name is Dexter Santos. I'm Vice President of Player Services for the NFL Players Association. My career has involved stints in Major League Baseball for about 10 years. the NBA for about 10 years. I've been with the NFL Players Association now for about 17. I've spent my entire career in sports and working with athletes and trying to educate these young men on, life beyond sports, because most of these guys will work a lot longer than they will ever play football. So when you talk about partnerships and you talk about some of the things of aligning and understanding, and so we tell our players, don't play the short game, play the long game. And so it's not just about being a partner with a brand, but it's understanding that brand, understanding what the expectations are when you partner with a brand, because we believe these relationships can extend far beyond the playing field. And so from my vantage point, we work with over 2,000 players, and we control the collective rights of those players. So when you think trading cards, you think EA, Madden. So anytime a company is using 6 or more players, they've got to, or active players, they've got to come to us for a license. One of the beauties of being out here is that I'm open for business, right? And I'm not here representing the NFLPA. I'm representing the 2,000 guys that stand behind me. And so it's been an incredible journey. I've learned something along the way. There was a time 15 years ago where I got a little disenchanted with sports. Like anybody, I'm like, well, you got teachers, you got doctors, you got people out here that's impacting lives. And I told myself the 15 years I'd worked on the team side, and I said I left sports, and I said I would never get back in sports unless it was a national position. But getting back on this side, I'm now able to impact young lives that have influence. And the influence that these guys have now is incredible. I was on the plane coming over here, and I had on a Colorado Buffaloes hat. And, with everything that's gone on with Colorado and all the excitement that one person has brought to that program, this lady runs up to me. She says, "You go to Colorado?" I said, "No." She said, "My son's going there." And a lot of this has to do with what people are seeing, what's part of pop culture, what's part of the conversation today. So again, I'm happy to be here, particularly with some royalty on the stage down here on the other side down here. So, thank you.
Sweet. Thank you.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, one of the things that strikes me is that this panel represents just an incredible variety of brands.
Yeah.
And every brand has different needs in terms of what's right for a partnership. And so the next question, I'll start with you, Kheri, is what is your methodology for figuring out if a partnership is the right sort of thing? And if there's an example of one that either was right or wrong from your past, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a bit of art and science. So we really try to start with what are we trying to do for the business or for the brand? What do we want the partnership to do for us? So if I think I mentioned it, if it's awareness or if it's changing perceptions. JBL was one where we wanted to change someone's perception on the brand. We were going up against Beats and Bows, and no one really knew who we were. So we needed to start somewhere, and so we used the NBA to really accelerate us. If you think about where we are now with our regional spring waters, they're well known. Their awareness is 90% or above on the 6 brands. And so finding an entity that allowed us to speak nationally, that got us into retail in a significant way, that was really at our core. So how can I connect with a consumer, find a pastime that we know they love, but then get it into retail? So we got a couple of questions where the question was, well, you're not in any of the arenas, you're not in any of the venues, this isn't really working. But it wasn't what our core was. I didn't need distribution at a venue in order to succeed with what I was doing. We did a program in the back half of the year to win tickets to the World Series, and we had 6 million entries into that. It's huge, right? We would have never been able to get it without it. So I think back to the core of what is it that I need a partnership to do, and then making sure that I'm writing a partnership that allows you to do it. We've had some other ones where it's a bit sketchy. So we signed Doja Cat when we were at JBL. And if anybody knows Doja Cat, she's amazing artist, not always consistent in how she shows up, and you never knew what you were getting. So important for us was to make sure that our internal executives understood what we were buying into. We knew our consumers were going to get it. Yeah. We were not concerned about that. But it was more about, making sure that everybody understood potentially the risk that came along with the partnership. So really understanding what you need to get out of it and what risks or opportunities may be within it. And I think, Dexter, as you mentioned, is making sure you're partnering with someone who has the same shared goals,
Yes.
right? Because if you don't, it's very easy to go left and it becomes something in writing. I did your post and now I'm going to move on. And where you're really successful is when you can create a collaboration.
That's true.
Yeah. Amazing.
Can
Please.
I add on to that? I just want to give a little bit of history with the BET brand, because as I sit here, I think that might be my next book, because it's a long story and it's more complicated than most people realize. When I started with BET, as I said, I was general counsel, and BET was 6 years old. So half the country wasn't wired yet. The big cities weren't wired yet. I was living in DC. No one had ever heard of BET. We didn't have cable. And that was 1986. So it wasn't that long ago. But anyway, BET was on this growth trajectory. And if you all remember, we were the only brand targeted to the African American community for a very long time. You could say we had a monopoly. And it was because Bob Johnson, the founder, was out there first. He was working with the Cable Television Association, but it was also because cable was the promise of diversity. You can have a network devoted to women. You can have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 devoted to sports. The golf channel, the tennis channel. You can have, one targeted to black folks. So it was all about, we went from 4, if you count Fox, networks, to 36 channels, which eventually became 500 channels. So it was all about diversity. The part I want to explain to you is when I took over as CEO, we started getting our first competition. TV One came along. There was other threats of competition, but they all fizzled out earlier. But I remember the day TV One announced they were going to launch. And they were backed by Comcast, so they had a legitimate backer. And I remember calling the COO of Viacom saying, "Oh, I just want you to know we now have competition." And he said to me something I've always remembered. He said, "Debra, don't worry. Competition makes the leader stronger." And I took that and put it in my back pocket. I said, "Okay, here we come." And I went and hired a consultant I met at a Microsoft CEO conference to come in and help us with our brand and who we wanted to be. And the first thing I said to my executives is, black is not a brand. Right? We've been black for 15 years now. It's worked for us, but it's not a brand, especially when you have competition. Because how are we going to differentiate ourselves from TV One or from VH1 or from WeTV, all the, white brands who wanted to be black all of a sudden. VH1 had a Black Monday night. Bravo had a Black Thursday night. I don't know. Oprah came out. No one thought she was going to be black, but she found out that black worked for her. So all of a sudden she's black. And so, I put the executives in a room and let them out periodically for like 18 months and said, we have to come up with a brand strategy. And we did. And what we wanted to be to the black community was different from what everyone else represented. We came up with a slogan called "We Got You," which it's not perfect English, but it kind of summed up what we wanted our community to feel about us. We had brand pillars. We Are Family was one of them. Fresher Than That was one of them. Something about education. So we had all these feel-good things that we wanted BET to represent. And that was a turning point in BET's history. Because before that, our audience were complaining about videos, which we didn't produce, but we put them on the air. There were protesters outside my house because they didn't like Lil Wayne video, whatever. And we had Oscar Michaud movies on. Anything black, we put it on. But at this time, we had to start doing, or wanted to start doing, and our audience was demanding original programming. So we had to figure out what we wanted that to be. Did we want to be like PBS? Did we want to be raunchy like VH1? No. Did we want to be authentic? Yes. So all of that went into our brand, and then we couldn't launch it with a slogan until we actually started doing the programming. So I guess this whole thing may have taken about 3 years, but it started working. And our community demanded even more for us. When news happened, they wanted to come to BET. When we did the award show, they wanted us not only to represent music, but what people were doing in the community. We started Black Girls Rock. We started BET Honors. We started Being Mary Jane. You know, she had 2 brothers who had drug problems, but part of the show was helping them get help. Not glorifying that they had drug problems. We had to stop doing reality because reality is all about train wrecks, and that's not what we wanted to be. So it was just a great process when I look back on it. And, you know, people kind of still give me credit for that, changing the direction of the network, changing the brand, and really defining who we wanted to be in terms of original programming. And I remember the consultant said to us, the leadership group, you want to be like Apple. If someone attacks Apple, the consumers of Apple go after them. Yeah. Apple does not have to protect themselves or explain themselves. The consumers of Apple will go after it. And that was my guiding light. I wanted people to love the BET brand. I wanted people to defend the BET brand, because there's always something that's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, I was in Costa Rica on vacation, and all of a sudden the Beehive went after us because one low-level BET.com person had said something about Blue Ivy's hair. And all of a sudden, we're under full attack, full attack. I'm like, what is happening to my Twitter feed? And so I called the head of music. I said, what happened? He said, oh, somebody said something about, you know, did Blue Ivy really wake up like that? And so now everyone's mad at us. And I was like, well, we need to use our goodwill to show that that's not who we really are. You can't control everyone that works for you. People are always going to step outside the lines. And we had to dismiss that person. We had to call Beyonce and tell Beyonce we dismissed that person. We had a rule at BET where you could never talk about Beyonce anyway, because we knew that was trouble. But so
good guardrails.
Right, yeah, because the Beehive would come for you. So, but the lower level BET.com person didn't understand it. But anyway, I say all that you know, brand is a really precious thing. Yeah. You know, first you have to build it, then you have to give it some qualities, and then you have to protect it. Yeah. And you have to keep it current. That's what the fresher than that meant in our brand. Yeah. You know, I never wanted to be an old brand. I wanted to keep up with technology. I wanted, you know, if AI is the new thing, I wanted BET to be all on top of that. Yeah. I didn't want someone to come in new and take our brand away. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of people don't think of it in all those terms, but you have to. Yeah. And I don't know if you remember, you probably weren't at JBL at the time, but Bet on Jazz had a deal with them years ago.
I was not there yet.
Yeah, early on, and we thought they were a good brand. But when you pick your partners, you have to pick people that, you know, have the same intentions and same values.
Speaking of brands, Dexter, you're managing essentially, or working with 2,500 players who are each their own brand and have to pick the right partners. And I'd imagine you have an infinite set of stories of great moments and difficult times. That's probably also resulted in an evolution of methodology. How do you think about it? How do you advise the players that you work with?
Well, I mean, look, I mean, things are evolving right in front of us right now. Everybody heard about NIL and what college players are getting paid now. Some guys are being paid more money. They'll make more money in college than they'll ever make in the NFL. When you think about the numbers, I think like 73,000 college players, 16,000 of those guys are eligible for the draft. Of those 16,000, only 0.5 will make an active NFL roster. So you have a player that will spend 15 years trying to play 3. So it's very easy for us to have a conversation with guys coming in now. We have an intake process where we do marketing profiles. Now, what I always tell people is when you go to a company, don't think that they have all the answers. When I first got to the Players Association, and I would say, well, where is it who represents Tom Brady? And they would say, well, it's Steve Dubin. I'm like, where's that at? Well, we just know. So I'm like, wait a minute, we got all these players in the league, but we don't have a process to identify who's marketing the player?
Yeah.
What happens if something happens to you? So immediately I start putting in processes to sort of identify certain key things that we needed. And we also do what we call a marketing profile, where we dive into the player's, what is his habits, what does he like to do, what is his passion points, all those things, because I don't recommend players I don't know. We have one time, and whether somebody's spending $5,000 or they're spending $1 million, we got one time to make a good impression, because if we don't, all of our guys get lumped in. Well, we never use football players again, off of one guy. And so what we try to do is ensure that our players understand that. To your point, each one of these guys are an individual corporation. But when you start talking to players, what you find is that a lot of times their representatives don't want to tell them bad news, or they don't want to be honest. And so you have to be very honest with players. In our world, we do not get compensated for what players make off the field. So we have there's no vested financial interest directly back to us. So if a player gets $100,000, he gets $100,000. And so a lot of times we'll have, even with the parents that are coming in now, we're having to educate the parents, because we're having parents now starting to represent kids. They're getting involved in the conversation. So we try to make sure that we have programs in place to educate these guys, not just on marketing, but also, you know, while we would look at a contract from a player's perspective for legalese to protect our rights, we tell the player, you need to have your own attorney. It's not just about us. We're looking at the collective rights. As an individual, you need to have someone else looking at your rights. So we try to have those parameters in place, encouraging guys to set up LLCs and ways that they can save money and ways that they can kind of manage their career.
Just hearing the stories, like, partnerships are incredibly varied. They don't fit in a box.
Yeah.
There's an expression, though, we measure what we treasure. How do you think about measurement of partnerships and relationships? I'll let anyone start who'd like to think about that.
I'll jump in. And so we started off by saying, how do we find the right partner? We have found a lot more success when you put your ROI at the beginning of a partnership versus once you've signed it, right? Because by then it's a bit too late. So and we also in everyone that I've worked with and all my my executive teams, it's really understanding that an ROI is not just about $1 back. And really making sure that it's clear. I can measure some return, and yes, there will be a return that's going to be $1 return tomorrow. But then there is long-term impact that we need to add into an ROI, right? And so we'll put in the measurement tools right at the beginning. We think we're going to see an increase in displays in the retail store. We're going to bring a couple of players into retail meetings. We are going, right? And so we list where we think we're going to get the return on this by either goodwill or consumer or awareness levels going up. Most of the leagues will have research that they can do against their own cohort, and they'll do research and they'll say, okay, when you started this partnership, 10% of the people knew about your brand, and then 6 months later, oh, it went up by, to 20%. And so you can show that there's an awareness drive just within the folks that are watching any given entity. So we try to make sure that's really clear in the upfront. It also makes it easier to get approved. Right? So if we're going in and asking for several $1 million on a partnership that's going to last a couple of years, sometimes that will go all the way up to the board. Right, that has to come with what is the measurement, what are we going to get out of it at the end? And we've had a lot of success in doing it. So when you can go back to the board and say, hey, we got the retail extensions, and oh, by the way, 6 million people entered in, they go, that's exactly what you said was going to happen. And it's like, a little bit of a tick box on, being able to say it's working, and therefore we should continue it.
And I'll pick up on that by saying, to your point, we try to meet with the brands ahead of time to define what are those measurable results. And I always look at things from the perspective in terms that players post because they want to. When you start making them post because they're getting paid, somehow there's something lost in the translation. So we want our players invested. We want them invested in a way that there's some empathy with the partner and what they're trying to achieve. So if it's just transactional, then I don't want a guy involved, because I already know what that looks like. Because I want you coming back. I don't want you going to baseball. I don't want you going to the NBA. I want that person with us.
It needs to be authentic.
I would say in the media space, I used to say all the time that we get a report card every day. It's called Nielsen ratings. So people would say, I want to see more news. I want to see more of this. I don't like this show. Well, I could go to them and say, but you didn't watch it. Look at the Nielsen ratings.
Right.
And usually when we cancel shows, it was because of the Nielsen ratings. Now, I also understood and still understand that Nielsen is not perfect. And especially its measurement of multicultural audiences. It's for shit. And, so you have to use it with skepticism. Yeah. Unfortunately, our advertisers rely on it a lot, and they don't want to give you the benefit of the doubt. They rather, there's something called ADUs in the media space. Oh, you all know about that. So if we don't deliver the rating we tell an advertiser we're going to deliver, we owe them audience deficiency units. I think that's still it, which means we have to do make goods. If you say you're going to get a 0.7 and you get a 0.5, there are a certain number of make goods you got to give us. So it's never in an advertiser's interest to, say, oh yeah, no, I get it. Nielsen's wrong. You really did better. That's not. They rather it undervalue what you're doing. So you have to understand that. Now with digital and, I have no idea what AI is doing to the space. It's probably turning it on its head. But even with digital measurements, things became a little easier. I don't know if any of you remember, I'm probably showing my age, 800 numbers. Yep. Some advertisers preferred 800 numbers because that would give you a fairly accurate number of how the audience is responding. But with 30-second spots, there's a whole lot of trust in there. Did the commercial make people feel good? We used to argue that advertisers should advertise with BET because it showed the black audience you care about them. They would say, oh, why do we have to advertise with BET? We can get more black eyeballs on NFL. And we said, no. Well, yeah, you can, but it won't show that you really care about the black audience because everybody watches NFL. So if you want that warm, fuzzy feeling, you got to come to BET. I mean, there are all kind of mind games that are played, but on both sides. But I think the most important thing is what we mentioned before. You got to share the same values. You got to be going after the same audience. You want from a media side, you want your advertisers to project the image that you want to project as a media platform. So I went on the board of P&G because for years they were very supportive of BET. They were always very interested in diversity. They had My Black is Beautiful. They had Queen Latifah as a spokesperson and Janelle Monáe. And, so we could go off into the sunset together and build campaigns together, and they could come to the BET Awards. That was their on-the-ground activation. So there's so many parts of it, but I think the main part is not all about numbers. I mean, numbers help. I used to look at numbers for focus groups and, ratings and all of that stuff. But a lot of it is just gut level feeling and what magic can we make together and how do we make the audience feel that magic.
It's funny, social media has also helped a lot, right? And it's really changed the game. If we think about a partnership, so we were lucky enough 2 months ago, wonderful man named Ashton Hall decided that he loved Saratoga, and we love him for that. But internally, we've talked a lot about that, though, because Ashton Hall was an influencer who did a morning routine. And the morning routine included pouring Saratoga into a bowl of ice water and dousing his face in it, and then he would wipe his face with a banana peel. I mean, he had this whole routine, but it was real enough that it was high quality content. He was presenting himself to the world like, this is the way, this is the way I am. And we used to talk about the viral moment, and oh my goodness. And really, though, you have to, as a marketer, make people want your brand. And we got to a stage with Saratoga that he wanted to do this. He wanted it to be in his video. It wasn't paid. We did not say, hey, please do this. And that genuine desire to engage with the brand makes a partnership even more real. And I mean, the video had 8 million views
yeah,
plus,
right.
was picked up on Saturday Night Live. I mean, it was absolutely
and on.
phenomenal. But because the brand was ready to be there, it was in store. You could find it. It was on Top Chef. So we did all the pieces to lead up to it, and then had someone who really just wanted it by their side. And so this was a partnership that wasn't a paid partnership, but was an amazing one, because he fit sort of the ethos of the brand and this desire to rebel against the mundane, which is where we're really bringing that brand. And it just allowed the brand to accelerate where it was because of the partnership that we had that was not an official partnership.
Yeah, and I think that authenticity comes into play, right? Because if your followers feel as though, and you have guys, even the players are looking at their social. They won't put a post up if they don't feel it's going to do well.
Right.
And so they're looking at the authenticity. They know that their followers are looking at the authenticity. So if they're using the product, and that's kind of one of the things we tell our players is we work with about 35 NFL sponsors and 100 and some licensees, and we tell our guys all the time, know these companies, understand what their pressure points are. You know what, if you want to go out, like you're saying with the guy, what he did with the water, we tell guys, look, if you're interested in Campbell's soup, start doing a lot of things with your mom, right? So anything where we have those pressure points with our partners, we're telling our players, if you're into home improvement and you like do-it-yourself projects, post them. We have Lowe's, right? So we're trying to educate our guys on what are those pressure points that our partners are looking for, because they don't want to have to convert you to a partner.
They don't want to make you a believer. They
Exactly.
want you to believe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
I have one more question, and then we'll hopefully have time to ask anything from our guests in the audience. Let them bring any question that they have. As a group, you've mentioned a lot of things that are changing in the world right now, whether that's AI or media or culture or social media. And I'm just wondering as you think about partnerships, like what are the areas now where you feel the most pressure of change or the need to evolve because of the changing factors in the world?
Well, I would say, I'm not running a media company anymore, so I don't have to worry about social. Of course, we always love great social interaction from my foundation or other things that I do. I'm going to look at it from a board perspective right now, because since January, the biggest change and unfortunately bad touch point has been the attempt to roll back DEI. And that's taking up so much room in the boardroom and so much time for the companies that I serve on their board in terms of how do we keep doing stick to the values that we have. And, in Marriott's position, we want to be open for all. We want to provide opportunities for all. So how do you do that in an atmosphere that's being created by this administration where the word DEI is a negative? The same president attaches it to black. We're trying to make black a negative, trying to associate it with incompetence. Which really kills my heart, and it makes me worry about my children and my grandchildren and what they'll face. And, I'm sure all of us on this panel and in this room have fought so hard for DEI and affirmative action, whatever we've called it at the time, and for progress for multicultural groups, that to live through this time has really been challenging. And our basic values are being attacked, and people are being allowed to say things they couldn't have said 6 months ago. And, I personally, I just wanted to go away and this administration to go away so we can get back to business, because we have made so much progress. And you look at things like the NFL Super Bowl or the Grammys or the Tonys the other night. We've put in the work. Boards I'm on, we now have 3 black board members, 50% women, and to think that those numbers are being attacked or being hidden has really been a pain point for me. I love social media, I love technology, I love changes, and as I said, when I ran BT, I always wanted to be in the forefront of that, but this is taking us backwards, and it's really sad to see.
I agree, and the one thing I always say, because we're trying to say DEI is negative. I walk into a room and I am nothing but DEI.
Right.
Right, and I can't not be, and it is positive because I am sitting here today because of all the things that I did to get here.
Right.
Not because I'm black and female. I am black and female proudly and happily and successfully. So I don't walk away from the prescriptive of DEI is bad because it can't be.
But
because
you're
I'm
there
standing here.
definitely not because you're incompetent. I think that was too many negatives. Yeah. But these folks that are trying to roll it back would like people to think that the door was open and somehow you
found my way through it.
You met lower standards.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
and all the bosses along the way decided that they were going to accept lower standards.
Right. No, that's not it.
Never.
A door was open, yay, and you got in and proved yourself.
The door. I don't even.
Or
maybe there wasn't a door
maybe
that
there
wasn't
was.
open.
Yeah.
I opened my own door.
Right.
Now I stand on the shoulder of giants, so don't let me say that the wrong way. I will say though, on top of that, is the evolution of how quickly technology is moving, and really trying to understand how we as brands use technology to help what we're trying to do in social media, in where we're going. And making sure that, to the point of being diverse, our products are purchased by everyone, and they're purchased for different occasions, and understanding the consumers as we go forward and understanding how they use the technology to keep things moving is where we're spending a lot of time is who's the right consumer, what's the right target, making sure we're reaching them in the right way, with the right partners, with the right entities, and ensuring that we're evolving as we go. I think the speed of change is something that we have to stay on top of.
Yeah, and I'll just close in terms of our biggest thing, obviously, is technology, AI. We have the collective rights of players and protecting those rights. We see that coming down, there's an evolution where we've got to shore up a lot of the technology that we use to track stuff, right? Because now you can go online and I don't know, did this player say this or did he not say it?
Yeah.
Right.
And so we tell our guys to be just as vigilant as we are. We're in Washington, D.C. We can't be all over the entire United States. But that truly is going to be a challenge and is a challenge right now for us. So we're basically definitely watching the market and trying to figure out, is there technology out there now that can identify the technology that is false?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and monitor, see what's happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a question from the audience that we could take?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the time. This is wonderful. My name is Ashley Green. I lead an accounts team at a Black-owned independent agency in Washington, D.C. So my question is about partnership from a little bit of a different perspective on the agency side. So I lead accounts, like I said, and so we don't call our clients clients. We call them our partners because it really is. We are very vigilant about building relationships and are intentional about how we navigate building work with them. And so I'm curious, as you all think about the execution of partnership with brand partners, how do you consider partner with agencies that are doing that work?
For us, our agencies are an extension of the team, and so one of the things that we've seen a lot is the merging of a lot of agencies, right? And so agencies will come in and tell you that they can do everything, and they want to sell you one package. They say, okay, we're going to do PR, and we got activation for you. And I've always been under the tenets of you have a core at what you're really good at. And I think as an agency, if you're really good at saying what you're good at and showing it and proving it, I think that's more successful than having an agency that says they can do everything. And so I had a meeting the other day with one of our agencies, and they were saying, well, how can you give us, how can we get more of your business? And I was like, you can't, right? You are doing a great job at what you do, and that's what I need you to continue to do for me. So I think if you really understand kind of what is at the core of what you do really well and can talk about that, for me, at least, that's been very helpful, especially with a smaller agency. It's not try to do everything really well, it's do that thing really well. And for me, that's been really important in picking my agencies.
And how much are you bringing in-house? Because I see that happening with a lot of companies.
We do have an internal agency. It's a mix. We tend to use them more for extensions and they do actually create. Our internal agency has done our Saratoga advertising, so they are phenomenal in the limited space, in the limited scope that they have. But we tend to use them for like extension work more than core agency work, but they function as both actually.
Maybe one last question. Yeah. Great.
So kind of summarizing, from what I heard from each one of you, and hi, my name is Rachel Hardy, also based at an agency, independent Black-owned agency. A lot of what you talked about in partnership, it sounds also a lot about risk, whether you're talking about the players and like their legacy that you essentially kind of have in your hands and what kind of partnerships to make and what risks to take. You talked a little bit about like partnerships with celebrities and Doja Cat. Like, how do you decide? And then even with the rebrand of like We Got You and BET Networks, like that's a huge risk to take when you have a lot at stake. How do you kind of make that decision, kind of ladder or that decision tree, like when so much is at stake? How do you decide which risk to take?
Yeah, I'll just speak from our vantage point. It's ensuring that everybody's at the table. I don't want to just meet with the agency separate, then I'm meeting with the brand separate. Everybody has to be at the table. And you're not just, aligning or combining partners, you're aligning across purpose. Does the purpose align? Are we all together? I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is to not be aligned and no one says it. And so from us, we're wanting you to come back. And I tell partners all the time, we can be as involved as you want us to be. I can be fully engaged. Or if you only want us to just find you a player, you're going to scrub his background, you're going to do all those things, that's fine. But, we want it to be successful, so we try to make sure that we roll our sleeves up. Because again, keep in mind, from my vantage point, I've got 2,500 players. I got to have you back. So I'm going to do everything I can to ensure that we get you the right player, that he aligns with your purposes, that he fits your brand, that it's authentic, and that he's engaged and he's invested in what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I would say the biggest risk that I see CEOs take, and I try not to take this risk when I was CEO, is that when times get hard, they cut the marketing budget. The marketing budget is always the first thing that CEOs like to cut. True? And so we're in one of those times now where no one knows what's going to happen with the tariffs. No one knows what our economic system's going to look like next year. Companies are scared. And what do? They cut the marketing. And I'm just such a firm believer of marketing, and I love to say it in front of marketing people. But I really am. I mean, I think marketing is so important. I mean, I can't think of anyone that is not. Even Coke and Pepsi, they have to market against each other, and they've been around, forever. GM and Toyota, whatever. Marketing is important, and you have to do it right. And it's the worst thing to cut in hard times. And you have to have a good marketing team, a team that understands the data analytics, the AI of it all, the research, and you have to invest in those people. And you don't have to have a large marketing team, but you have to have a good one.
You have to have a good one.
Yeah, and you have to have people who can work with agencies, who can work with advertisers that people like. It's good to have a marketing team that people like and want to work with. And so I would say that's one of the biggest risks and one of the biggest mistakes that as an executive you can make. And and it's easy to say, oh, I got good programming, it'll market itself. No, it won't. You gotta market it. And you gotta tell people what time it's on. You gotta make people not only focus on the product marketing, but also the values of the company, the feel-good advertising. That's another thing people cut first. Oh, I got a $10 million marketing plan for brand. Gone. I used to put it in every year. First thing to go. So you have to really market well.
Yeah, and I think the key on risk is just understanding what it is.
Yeah.
Like if you can understand what it is and call it out, you can then assess how bad it is, right? If you're blind to it and it surprises you, that's when risk will really get you. It's like call it out, be clear about it, be very upfront about any risk you think you might be taking with a partner or anything that you're doing with spend, with a media buy. If you think it's risky because it's with a channel that maybe is a little bit more risky, the more upfront you are with it, the easier it is to kind of talk through it and understand when it's coming.
And sometimes brands and celebrities or music artists, in my case, want you to be the adult in the room.
Yep.
You know, they want you to say no. And if you don't say no, they'll take it as far as they can. I remember when we were having trouble with videos, we'd send them back to the labels, they'd edit them, they'd send them back. You know, we go back and forth, back and forth. And after I had protesters out in front of my house for 6 months, I realized that I was the ultimate decision maker. And I was gonna get the blame and the credit if things went well. So one time, just a short example, Kanye West had this video called Flashing Lights, and they would always bring me the troublesome videos so I could make the last call. And they brought it to me, and I was like, this is nothing. This is, you know, like when the Supreme Court says you don't know pornography until you see it. I said, this is just straight pornography. There's nothing, there's no societal value to this video at all. I'm not putting it on BET. And my music video people and my head of music went crazy. They were like, but Kanye is a genius. You can't turn down. I'm like, why not? He wasn't out in front of my house protecting me, right? Why do I have to protect him? I was like, and I'm a lawyer, so I believe in First Amendment right. I said his First Amendment right is to air it and get it out there. He doesn't have a First Amendment right to put it on BET, right. You know. And I'm running this network, and I'm gonna make the decision. And oh, my execs were crazy. They're like, oh my God, he's gonna call you, and he's gonna be so mad. And I was like, let him call me. Do you know he never called me?
No.
I never aired the video. MTV did, good for them. VH1 did, good for them, but I didn't. And all I could take from that is Kanye wanted someone to stand up to him. You know, this wasn't this wasn't a hill he was going to die on. No. Whether Flashing Light with a half-naked woman and him in the trunk that she beats him up when he comes out, he wasn't going to die on the hill for that. Yeah. So I guess my point is you have to know your own values, and you have to, when you take risks, you have to believe in them. Right. You have to say, okay, well, if Trump calls me, I'm going to tell him what I think. You know, I don't care. I'm not hiding. You know, I'm going to tell Rihanna or Kanye or anyone else. No, it's not coming on BET. I remember I saw LaToya Luck at one time, and I didn't know her very well. And she said, oh, Miss Lee, I just did a video, and you're going to love it. You know? And so word was getting out that I was making the last decision. And artists started behaving appropriately. You know, it used to be the background dancers from the award shows look like strippers. I was like, look, I have nothing against scantily clad women. But if they're going to be on the BET Awards, they're going to be classy, you know, and I'm going to stop having, you know, women there. So I used to send one of my female attorneys down to look at every costume of every dancer that was on BET Awards. I'm like, if this is what we have to do, this is what we have to do. The brand. So, and if they have a problem, send them to me because I know why I'm doing it. So take the risk, but be sure you believe in it, and don't always rely on your people. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but don't always rely on your people because, you know, they have their individual goals and, you know, they want to keep the celebrities or the players happy or whatever. You got to make the decisions for yourself.
Thank you for that great question. Thank you, Debbie, Kheri, Dexter, for your incredible wisdom.
Thank you.
So,